Hello. I feel led to make just a short video. I don't know how long this is going to be. As always, all my videos are pretty much off the cuff. I just get led to discuss a topic for some reason. I was just watching somebody on a video being interviewed talking about the Old Testament and the New Testament and how Christ nullified the law of God basically so that we're under grace. And this is the problem I have with what people call Christianity. They are just off their rockers. They cherry pick stuff. So she of course quoted, I just put it in highlight here on the computer. She of course quoted this, but she doesn't go through and follow up. Because this is one of those verses in the Bible that causes people to think that the law of God has been done away with. So this is in Matthew 5:17, and he says, "Do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets." So what's he talking about here? The Old Testament, because in the Old Testament is called by Karaite Jews the Tanakh, and that's really just an acronym for T, Torah, N, Navim, and K, Ketuvim. And that's basically what the Old Testament is. It's the Torah and the prophets, the Nevim, and the Ketuvim is the writings. So like Proverbs and Psalms and Ecclesiastes and so on and so forth. So the sum of the Old Testament is called the Tanakh, the Torah, the instructions, the law, the prophets like Ezekiel, Nahum, Hosea, Jeremiah, etc., and the writings, Chronicles, Kings, Proverbs, so on and so forth. Okay? So he says, "Do not think that I have come to destroy the law," the T, the Torah, "or the prophets," the Nevim. And he leaves off the writings here. He's just talking about these two here, parts of the Old Testament. Remember, they didn't have a New Testament yet. You got to remember that. When Christ is walking around in his, what we call the first advent, when he fulfills the spring feasts, they didn't have a New Testament yet. The only Bible there was the Old Testament, the Tanakh. "I did not come to destroy," so he says destroy twice here, "but to fulfill." But see, they twist this and they think fulfill means to end, which is another word for destroy. "Don't think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to destroy, to end it, to cancel it, to annul it." That's not what he means here with this word fulfill. But let's skip that for just a second, because if we read through here, we'll see that he can't be talking about this as being meaning that he's going to end it through anything that he does. What he's really doing here, just a quick, he's fulfilling it in as meaning. He's filling it up with meaning, the pure intent of the law that had become twisted over the years by the rabbinical, pharisaical rabbis and Sanhedrin and things like that. That through being in a state of apostasy, they started twisting the law to their own destruction. Interpreting it as they thought in their own minds, as they wanted to interpret it. So he comes to fulfill it, to fill it up with meaning as it was originally intended. And he does this by showing people how to actually keep the law. He doesn't destroy any of it. Any of it. Now let's see why. "For assuredly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away." Now, I don't know about you, but I look up in the heavens, the atmosphere, the sky, it hasn't gone anywhere. And it's the same heaven that's been around for thousands of years. And the earth, I'm still walking and biking and traveling around on the earth and doing all kinds of things on the earth. So neither the heaven or the earth have passed away yet. "For assuredly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, not one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law the Torah, till all is fulfilled. Now let me ask you something. Here's fulfill again. Fulfilled. Has everything in the scriptures been filled up yet? Have we seen everything? Have we seen everything full from what's supposed to happen in the scriptures? Has the second coming occurred where he fulfills, lives out, shows us what the meaning, the full meaning and intent of the fall feasts are? Tabernacles, well, let's put them in order. Trumpets, atonement, tabernacles. That's what's happening when he comes back again. He's fulfilled the spring feast and Pentecost, which is kind of the summer vacation day, annual holy day. He's filled those up with meaning for us. But most people don't understand the meaning. They don't understand what he was doing. So he hasn't fulfilled everything yet. Has the new heaven and earth been created, as spoken of in prophecy? Remember, he said, I didn't come to destroy the law or the prophets. The prophets talk about a new heaven and new earth. Just go to the end of Revelation. Has that happened yet? Has this heaven and earth passed away and God created a new heaven and new earth yet? After the 1,000-year millennial reign of Christ? No, none of that's happened yet. So, not one jot or one tittle. Now, this is an English translation from the King James. So what's a jot and a tittle in the English? Well, that's the little dot on an I and the little cross on a T. Now, what this is in the Hebrew is all of the little special characters. There's some special characters every once in a while throughout the Hebrew Bible, written in Hebrew, that give a different, kind of a special meaning at that point. Now, in the Hebrew writings, these little special characters don't happen very often. They're very rare. So he's saying not one of those little special characters in Hebrew is in no ways going to pass from the law till all is fulfilled. Not even a little dot over an I or a cross on a T, if you want to look at it that way from English. None of that Old Testament law is going to go away. Now let's see what he keeps going. Oh boy, does it get good here. Whoever therefore breaks one of these least of these commandments. Somebody asked me one time, what do you think one of these least commandments are? And the first one I thought of was the commandment that you can't take a bird and its eggs at the same time. That's kind of a least commandment, right? God does not want you to kill the mother and take and eat her eggs too. He says, take one or the other. Don't take them both. Now, what you really should do is just take one or two of the eggs, let the mother have a couple of eggs, and then if you're that hungry, and then, maybe after, a few of the babies grow up, you can take one of them. We're supposed to be good stewards of the earth. We don't want to wipe out species, which is what we've been doing under this civil system of ours, thinking we're smarter than God. So to me, that's one of the least commandments. Let me see if I can pull that up. I don't know where, I'm not exactly sure where that is, but let's see if I can pull that up so we can find it. I think it's a dam, and we'll put in eggs. We'll see if we can find it now. Okay. Say hen and eggs. Let's see what this is. Oh, here we go. All right, so it's in Deuteronomy 22:6. So this would be a least commandment. This is dealing between us, human mankind, and the animal kingdom. So this is kind of a least commandment. If a bird's nest chance to be before you in the way, in any tree or on the ground, with young ones or eggs, and the hen sitting on the young or on the eggs, you shall not take the hen with the young. Now, do you think that's a little less than you won't have any other gods, i.e., mighty ones, sovereign powers, lawmakers, ruling judges, instead of, in front of, or before me, Yahuwah. Or thou shalt not murder, or thou shalt not covet, or thou shalt not steal, or, any of the lesser statutes and commandments throughout the rest of the Torah. And some of those aren't very less. Even Christians think the 10 Commandments, but the two greatest commandments aren't even part of the 10 in Exodus 20 or in the restatement in Deuteronomy 5. The greatest commandment comes out of Deuteronomy 6, and the second greatest comes out of Leviticus 19 or 18, I believe. When Christ is asked by somebody, hey, what's the greatest commandment? And he says, he cites something out of Deuteronomy 6, which is actually part of the Shema. Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and blah, blah, blah. And then the second greatest commandment is love your neighbor as yourself. Well, those come from two different sections of the Torah, and they're not part of the 10 Commandments. Okay? So whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments, and I just gave you an example of least, and teaches men so. So not only do you break it, but you say, hey, you can go ahead and take that bird and all the eggs and all the babes and eat them. Go ahead. Shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. Ooh, ouch. Shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them, now we're still talking about these least commandments. We're not talking about the really important ones. We're just talking about, but whoever does these least commandments and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say unto you that unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, remember, he's constantly picking on these guys for screwing up the law. They've twisted it to their own destruction by adding all their own little human ideas to what this law means, and they kind of got upset because they weren't divorced. The northern kingdom of Israel was divorced. She became pagan. This is where a lot of Christians are. A lot of Christians around the world, regardless of skin color or ethnicity, they're probably descendants in some way, shape, or form of these pagan Israelites that were divorced and scattered from the northern 10 tribes called the lost sheep. And that's who this first advent was really was to nullify the marriage agreement by death so that Israel at the end of the age could be remarried. Now, Judah never got a bill of divorce. If we look at this from the male perspective, Israel is the prodigal son, and Judah is the older brother that stayed home. Okay, so in order to rectify that now when we talk about a husband and wife divorce, God gave Israel a bill of divorce in Jeremiah 3:8, I believe, and that ends the covenant with that northern kingdom. And then they got scattered all around the earth, and they became pagan. Now, some of them came back during the first century when the apostles were out running around. They're writing letters. If you read like the letters of Peter, and they're to the 10 or to the tribes lost or scattered. Who are they talking about? That northern kingdom of Israel. Remember, he said, I only came for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, the northern kingdom. That's what his first advent was for. And a lot of those were, remember, they're now Gentiles. They've been scattered, and they've become Gentiles and pagans, and they're doing all this sun god worship and all this other stuff, which is what got them divorced in the first place. But the Jews, when they went into captivity into Babylon, that freaked them out. So they started making their own oral law and traditions, and they called it putting a fence or a hedge around the Torah so they wouldn't break it. But Deuteronomy 4:2 and Deuteronomy 12:32 say, none of us have the ability or the authority or the power to add to the law of God or take away from the law of God. And I have a feeling he said that twice because it was going to be very important, because the Jews keep adding to the law of God with their Talmud and their Takanot and their Midrash and their Ma'asim of the rabbis, and the Christians take away from it. The northern 10 tribes of Israel were taken away from it from day one when they went astray. So your righteousness, how you keep this law, even these least of these commandments, that righteousness has to exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees. Otherwise, you're going to be called least in the kingdom. Okay? He didn't come to destroy the law. He came to teach you how to keep it according to the original intent of the Father, Yahuwah. So he's come in human form, right? He's in human form, and he's showing you how to do this. I'll even give you another quick example of how he screwed with the Pharisees. Remember when the Pharisees dragged a woman out to be tried by Yeshua for adultery? See, the law of adultery says there's a joinder there. In law, we call it a joinder. You can't bring one of the two parties committing an act of adultery to stand trial by themselves. The law says you have to bring them both, the man and the woman, or the two parties committing adultery. Okay? Now, the Pharisees only brought one. And we have this little ditty about he was drawing something in the dirt. Now, Christians, because they don't know the law, they just think he's doodling, like he's just sitting there not paying attention and listening. No. I know exactly what he drew in the dirt. He wrote out a question for these religious freaks that had twisted the law to their own destruction. Because he knew the law. He's the author of the law. Remember, he's the living word. He's the word made flesh. He knows that law inside out, upside down, and backwards and forwards. So what he wrote in the dirt was, where is the man? ? Now that shot him down because they knew too. They were trying to set him up. See, the law has not been destroyed. And another one real quick is in Acts 15 where Christians twist this. You had this dispute between Jews coming into the congregation and the pagan Israelites coming in, whether from Greek city-states or Asia Minor, wherever they were coming from and into. Now, we kind of see these cities around Asia Minor first off, but they traveled all over. So you got these Jews saying that in order to be saved, you got to be circumcised. Not understanding that Abraham's heart was circumcised first before he got circumcised in the flesh. It's always about in your spirit, in your character first, then you follow the law. God didn't give the law to the Israelites in Egypt first. He developed their faith and trust first through the plagues. Then they trusted him when he told them how to do the Passover in order to redeem them so that the firstborn sons were not killed in the last plague. Then a week later, that's the first annual holy day called the Feast of Unleavened Bread, is that Redemption Day. A week later, the last day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread is Salvation Day. So what were they saved from? Certain death at the hand of Pharaoh's army at the Red Sea. What did Yahuwah do? He performed this huge miracle to show them his power. So he blocked Pharaoh with a column of fire and smoke and all that. And he parted the Red Sea so they could pass through. Because they were like fish in a barrel. They were going to be killed easily by Pharaoh's army. But they were saved. So here you have trust and faith, allegiance, doing, what he said to do to be redeemed, then saved. Then he takes them to the mountain and gives them the law. So your obedience comes after these other things of trusting, redeeming, saving, then obedience to the law. That's the basic gospel message from the beginning. Always been that way. That's what Abraham did. Abraham trusted the Lord. The Lord said, hey, come out of those city-states that your father and family built up. I'm going to take you over here and do something special with you. Did Abraham say, no, you better give me some law first, or I'm not going to be able to follow you because I don't know what's. No, Abraham just trusted. Same thing with the circumcision. God said, I want to create a covenant with you. He did, and Abraham was willing to, was already had his heart circumcised to obey the law because he'd already been saved and redeemed and crossed over by listening and trusting in Yahuwah. And now Yahuwah says, hey, I want to make a covenant with you. This is going to be a forever covenant. What's forever mean? Does it mean it ever goes away? Does God ever cancel any of these covenants? No. All of them are in full force and effect today, just as they were when they were made by God in whatever party he made them with. So that law is forever. But now it's up to you when you're going to do it. Now back to Acts 15. Acts 15, these people were doing some pretty nasty pagan stuff every Sunday in their pagan temples. They were eating flesh that had its neck broken. It wasn't bled out. In other words, the blood was still in the meat. They were eating that meat and drinking the blood because it had been strangled, not butchered. And then after they were done having the meal, they would go have sex with these temple prostitutes. Now, it wasn't always women. It was what we call, transgender, gay, whatever. Whatever your sexual preference was, you go pick out your prostitute and have sex. This was the consummation. This is the wedding feast and consummation of sex, of being married to this other foreign and alien god, these gods of the civil law world. Okay? So what the Acts 15 Jerusalem Council was all about is we got to get these people that are coming into this system of God to immediately change these nasty pagan behaviors. So that's what those 4 or 5 things listed are in Acts 15 here. Let's pull that up real quick. They're all dealing with the pagan rituals that were going on. Okay, so here we go. And certain men came down from Judea and taught the brethren, unless you are circumcised according to the custom of Moses, you can't be saved. That's not true. Abraham was saved before he got physically circumcised. Abraham was a keeper of the law, even though he didn't have it written down. Yahuwah taught it to him. He was faithful to listen to Yahuwah. He was redeemed out of Ur and Chaldee, and then followed Yahuwah and did what Yahuwah did, trusted and had faith in Yahuwah. And when Yahuwah made a covenant with him, he went ahead and followed that because his heart was already circumcised. So he was already saved. He's already counted as righteous. Now he obeys the law. So it's not that you have to do this to be saved. That's not what saves you. But your obedience comes after you've been redeemed and saved. Then you start to be obedient because you have a new master, and this master has laws that you need to keep. Therefore, when Paul and Barnabas had no small dissension and dispute with them, they determined that Paul and Barnabas and certain others of them should go up to Jerusalem to the apostles and elders about this question. So being sent on their way by the church, they passed through Phoenicia and Samaria, describing the conversation of the Gentiles, and they caused great joy to all the brethren. And when they had come to Jerusalem, they were received by the church and the apostles and elders. Now this church word here, this is congregation, ecclesia, the assembly of people. But some of the sect of the Pharisees who believed, now this is what we call Messianic Jew today, but these are Jews that are believing that the Messiah, that Yeshua is the Messiah, and they're part of this congregation too. And they're still believing in this old system of the Talmudic way of the rabbis. It's necessary to circumcise them and to command them to keep the law of Moses before they can come into the congregation. And that's not the way. It's never been that way. Abraham wasn't circumcised first. God didn't tell Abraham, hey, cut the foreskin off your penis before you leave Ur and Chaldee, before I save you out of that, before I redeem you out of that, before I save you. Okay? No. Now the apostles and elders came together to consider this matter. And of course there was a lot of dispute here. This is heavy stuff. So they said, "Men and brethren, you know that a good while ago God chose among us that by my mouth the Gentiles should hear the word of the gospel and believe." This is Peter talking. So God, who knows the heart, remember, it's your circumcision of your heart first, acknowledged them by giving them the Holy Spirit, just as he did to us. Now, none of those people were circumcised, but yet God blessed them with the blessing of the Holy Spirit and made no distinction between us and them, purifying their hearts by faith. Now, therefore, why do you test God by putting a yoke on the neck of the disciples which neither our fathers nor we were able to bear? But we believe that through the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ, we shall be saved in the same manner as they. Then all the multitude kept silent and listened to Barnabas and Paul declaring how many miracles and wonders God had worked through them among the Gentiles. So now here comes, we're starting to get to the answer. And when they figure out how they're going to handle this dispute. And after they had become silent, James answered, saying, James is the brother of Jesus, Yeshua. Men and brethren, listen to me. Simon has declared how God at first visited the Gentiles to take out of them a people for his name. Now, what they're talking about here is these lost sheep of Israel. Now, I'm not saying that they're Gentiles. Believe me, they are Gentiles. They are pagan Gentiles. And anybody can come in. Just like the first exodus out of Egypt, it was a mixed multitude. It wasn't just Israelites. It was everybody that had gone to Egypt for relief from the famine at that time. Even Caleb was a Canaanite. He wasn't an Israelite. He just got grafted in or naturalized into the tribe of Judah. So that was the way a lot of them did. Once you become the part of a nation, your old nationality doesn't exist anymore. If you immigrate to the United States, you're an American. It doesn't matter whether you came from Nigeria or Japan or Russia or Ukraine or wherever. It doesn't matter. You now become an American if you're an American national. And that's the way it was. Anybody can be grafted in to the nation of Israel. And with this, the words of the prophets agree just as it is written. After this I will return and rebuild the tabernacle of David, which has fallen down, and I will rebuild its ruins and will set it up. So the rest of mankind may seek the Lord, even all the Gentiles who are called by my name, says the Lord who does all these things. Therefore, let's skip over and we'll get to this. We'll get to this answer to this question. What do they have to do first? What laws in the Torah do they have to start keeping immediately? Therefore, I judge that we should not trouble those among the Gentiles who are turning to God. Let's not make it too hard for them. Let's not overwhelm them. But that we write to them to abstain from things polluted by idols, from sexual immorality, and from things strangled, and from blood. Again, this is where they start. They have to immediately stop doing the rituals that they're doing in their pagan temples every Sunday. Easter, Christmas, even on the big holy days of the pagan sun gods. You stop doing that. Easter is this sexual fertility festival where they screw temple virgins and get them pregnant. And then 9 months later, what's 9 months from the spring equinox? Oh, say the winter solstice, around December 21st to the 25th. That's what is going on there. That's not one of these. None of the Easter and Christmas stuff is a biblical holiday in the Bible. This is all pagan. And they used to do some really nasty stuff. Now, just because we don't still do this nasty stuff, but we still do all the things that all these symbolic things represent, we're still doing it in God's eyes. Okay, so all these wealthy men of Israel, this northern kingdom, and even Jews partook of this for a while too, this paganism. They go to the temple on the first Sunday after the spring equinox, and they would have sex with these virgin temple prostitutes and get them pregnant, and then they'd give birth around the Christmas time, And then those little babies would be trained up for a few months, and then they would be sacrificed, literally killed, slaughtered, gutted, and eggs dipped in their blood. And then again, a new batch of virgin prostitutes would have sex with these elites and get them pregnant again, and this was repeating. And on a weekly basis, they were going in and performing this sexual immorality. They were eating meat, especially pork, that was strangled, so the blood was still in it, and then they drink blood every Sunday. But then on the high holy days in their paganism, they would have all this debaucherous stuff like on Easter and Christmas. So they have to stop this stuff immediately. And those are laws in the Bible, in the Torah. James is quoting exactly, laws right out of the Torah that you are to not do. And then he goes on to say, so these are the things we got to get them to stop doing immediately, these laws out of the Torah. But then they said, for Moses has had throughout many generations those who preach him in every city, being read in the synagogues every Sabbath. Now, what does that mean? Well, when you come into this, you're going to go on the Sabbath day, you're going to go into your congregation, and they're going to read from the Torah, which is what Moses was the scribe for. God told Moses, Yahuwah told Moses everything to write down, because the Israelites said, oh, we can't handle your big booming voice. Remember, they interrupted him at the mountain. He read off, 10 commandments, and then they stopped him. They said, oh, we can't handle hearing your big booming voice. Their hearts weren't circumcised yet. And then they said, hey, Moses, you go up the mountain and you have God tell you, and you write it down, and then you bring it back and tell us. God wasn't done talking to these people. That's where this idea of the 10 commandments being somehow separate from the rest of the commandments is absolute folly. The first commandment is in Genesis. Genesis 1, let's see here. Be fruitful and increase and fill the earth and subdue it and rule over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over all creeping creatures on the earth. There's the first commandment. Genesis 1:28. Genesis 1:29 is the second commandment. And Elohim said, see, I have given you every plant that yields seed, which is on the face of the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seeds. To you it is for food. Third commandment, over in Genesis 2:16 and kind of into 17. And Yahuwah Elohim commanded the man, saying, eat of every tree of the garden, but do not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for in that day that you eat of it, you shall certainly die. So there's the first 3 commandments, but they're in Genesis. Moses wrote the first 5 books, from Genesis all the way through Deuteronomy, and that's called the Torah. Those are called the instructions. Torah is instructions of Yahuwah. So every Sabbath, these people were going into their congregational gathering and they were reading and studying the Torah. So as they learned the Torah, all of it, they would implement it. So where does this circumcision come in? When they're ready. They have to be circumcised in the heart first. You ask a man who's not circumcised, when he's an adult, what is it that's going to cause him to want to cut the foreskin off his penis? Ouch. Right? That's going to take a big commitment. And you're not going to make that commitment yourself. Let's say you're uncircumcised. You're not going to make that commitment lightly. But once your heart has been circumcised and you understand this law, somewhere down the way, you may have it impressed in your spirit that you want to go ahead and be circumcised, just like Abraham. And that you're free to do that. And what if you choose not to? Well, how do we handle all the rest of the laws? It's like, Father, I know I'm supposed to do this, but I just don't think I can. I don't know if I can handle having the foreskin of my penis cut off. Now that I'm, whatever, if you're 50, 55 or 62 or something like that, maybe it's like, I know I'm supposed to do it. Please forgive me. I just don't know if I can. Well, you're asking for forgiveness, and you're asking for the blood of Christ to cover you. Now, I'm not the judge here. You got to do what's right in your eyes. You know, it's easy for me because I was circumcised as a boy, a baby. You know, it's already been done for me, but hell, that doesn't mean anything. That circumcision doesn't mean anything. That doesn't save you. That's the other point they're trying to make here. You cannot physically do something thinking that that's going to redeem and save you. Remember, that comes through faith, allegiance in your heart, in your being. And once you've been redeemed and saved, now you get the law. That's when the obedience comes in, right? The people coming to America that are becoming Americans, they want to be Americans in their heart. So they're going through the process of learning American law because they've already become Americans in their mind, in their spirit, and in their heart. Now they're just legally going through the process to be officially recognized as an American. And are they expected, once they become an American and pledge allegiance, announce their faith, fidelity, allegiance to Uncle Sam, are they expected to know and keep the laws of the United States? You see, it works the same way. Faith first, then eventually obedience. But this law has not gone away. Not one jot, not one tittle. For assuredly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, not one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled, and all has not yet been fulfilled. Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments. And I gave you an example of what I think is a least commandment. There's a lot of least commandments, and there's some great commandments. And Christ gave us two of the greatest ones. Let's see if I think we have that in Matthew 23. Let me pull it up in this one here. I think that's where somebody asks him, what is the greatest commandment? Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, here it's in, sorry, Matthew 22. It's because there's 23 right here. That's kind of why, probably. But it's Matthew 22. Teacher, which is the great command in the Torah? And Yeshua said to him, you shall love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being and with all your mind. Deuteronomy 6:5. This is the first and great command. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Vayikra or Leviticus 19:18. So let's go back and look at those. Probably come to Leviticus. Oh no, Deuteronomy first. Yeah. Come back and let's Deuteronomy 6. This is called the Shema. It's coming out of the Shema. Shema means hear, so that's why it's called the Shema, because hear, O Israel, and shall guard to do that it might be well with you, that you increase greatly as Yahuwah Elohim your fathers has spoken to you in the land flowing with milk and honey. Oh, sorry. Here it begins. Hear, O Israel, Yahuwah Elohim, Yahuwah is one. And you shall love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being and with all your might. Now, that's the greatest commandment. But that's not part of the Ten Commandments, which were restated in Deuteronomy 5 that come out of Exodus 20. And then the second greatest commandment is in Leviticus 19:18, which is again not part of the Ten Commandments. So the whole of that is, do not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the children of your people, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yahuwah. So there's the two greatest commandments. Okay? So he did not come to destroy. but to fill it up with meaning, the true meaning. How do you live this out? So he becomes our example. He filled that up with meaning and got rid of all the leaven. So we just look at how he did it, and he restates all of the Old Testament laws perfectly, either by direct citation, like what he did with the two greatest commandments, by his actions, or by implication through something that he's doing with somebody else. Every one of the laws in the Torah, he is doing. Let me give you an example. Did he have tzitzis on his? Did he wear tzitzis? Because a woman reached out and grabbed his tzitzit and was healed of her condition of bleeding. Like through the monthly cycle, she just never stopped bleeding. And when she grabbed his tzitzit, that little tassel that's in Numbers, somewhere in Numbers, that we're supposed to, it's a forever statute. It was after we screwed up and we didn't keep the law. So God said, here, you know what? You people are kind of stiff-necked and stubborn. Let me give you a visual reminder. You know how some people put rubber bands around their finger to remember to do something? Well, that's what that tzitzit is. That little tassel you're supposed to wear. It's a reminder of what you're supposed to do. Let's see if I can find that. I think that's in. Let's see. Oh, here's a good one too. This isn't one of those least commandments. He repeats this a few times. It's one law. For him who does whatever by mistake, there is one Torah, both for him who is native among the children of Israel and for the stranger who sojourns in their midst, i.e. the foreigner who becomes a resident, kind of a grafted in national. Okay, so no matter what, there's just one law. Oh, here's the tzitzit statute. See, and this happens because of they messed up. I think that was the Sabbath and the sticks. He was trying to build a fire. He was trying to get ready for work early, instead of respecting that. And because they were still kind of messing up, God said, hey, look, speak to the children of Israel, and you shall say when they make tzitzit on the corners of their garments throughout their generations. What? And to put a blue cord in the tzitzit of the corners. And it shall be to you, the blue cord represents the Messiah. Okay, that's what that is. The white cords, and the blue cord, that's the Messiah in there. And it shall be to you for a tzitzit, and you shall see it. Remember, okay, why are we doing this? So you shall see it and shall remember all the commands of Yahuwah and shall do them. And not search after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you went a-whoring, so that you remember and shall do all my commands and be set apart unto your Elohim. I am Yahuwah your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim to be your Elohim. I am Yahuwah your Elohim. So this is like somebody who puts a string around their finger or a rubber band around their wrist, or any kind of memorial that they see to remember to do something. That's why we do it. Okay, I'm gonna go real quick because this will be the last little deal here. I want to bring this up. I saw this. There's a church down the street from where I live that they put up these little goofy things on their board out front, and it really drives me nuts because they just cherry pick stuff all the time. And this is what we're talking about this law not going away until heaven and earth pass away, which will be at the end of the millennial age, and then everybody's going to have the law written on their hearts permanently. Okay, so what this church did down the street is they just put in verse 5, and they've left off this other stuff here that ties it all together. On their little billboard down there, it says, trust in Yahuwah with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Now that's what that pastor put on that board. Now what does that mean? Trust in Yahuwah with all your heart. Let's back up and see what Solomon was trying to say here. My son, do not forget my Torah. Okay. You should wear tzitzit, not to forget it. Christ came and fulfilled it, did it all, so we have a perfect example without all the bullshit that's been added or taken away by the various, religious groups that are just nuttier than a fruitcake. My son, do not forget my Torah, and let your heart watch over my commands. For length of days and long life and peace, they add to you. Remember, I believe it's James calls the Torah the perfect law of liberty. Let not loving commitment and truth forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Bind what around your neck? The Torah, the laws, the commandments, the statutes, the judgments, the ordinances of Yahuwah. Write them on the tablet of your heart, thus finding favor and good insight in the eyes of Elohim and man. Trust not in Yahuwah with all your heart, or trust in Yahuwah with all your heart. And so, what is this trust now? Let your heart watch over the commands. Don't forget my Torah. If you're trusting in Yahuwah with all your heart, you've learned all his Torah and are walking it out. And lean not on your own understanding. So this word lean here, similar to trust, they're two different Hebrew words, but they're kind of implying the same detail. Don't trust in your own understanding, your own wisdom, your own tree of the knowledge of good and evil, your own thoughts, what you think is right. Righteousness comes from this. So that church down there is feeding these people a little short because they really need to go all the way through. Know him in all your ways, and he makes all your paths straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear Yahuwah and turn away from evil. It is healing to your navel and moistening to your bones. It goes on, but what is this all coming back to? Don't forget my Torah. Let your heart watch over my commands. Do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. Are you fulfilling? Are you fulfilling that law in your actions? Because it's written on your heart, you've studied it out? Whoever therefore breaks one of these least of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. Do you want to be called least in the kingdom or great? But whoever does and teaches them, even the least, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you later. Bye.